Hi everyone, I'm Grace Gibbett, founder and CEO of ViaSkill. Most people quietly lose their proof of their work and careers. Projects get finished, fires get put out, skills get built, and then those wins disappear in old emails and forgotten files. ViaSkill is a living career platform that helps you capture with the work that you do as you go, turn it into stories and skills and proof so you can reuse it in interviews, promotions, or whatever comes next. Welcome to the ViaSkill Founders series. In this series, I sit down with founders who have been in the game for a while and are willing to talk about what it takes to build a business and how that actually looks, the good parts, the hard parts, the pivots, and the lessons that do not usually make it into the glossy little bios. My goal here is to make these conversations simple. If you're a founder or you want to be one, I want you to walk away with a mix of real talk, practical ideas you can use in your own journey. I'm really excited to be joined here by Daniel Redman. Daniel's been building and advising businesses for a long time. He started multiple companies, helped a lot of small and mid-size and businesses to grow, survive. He also comes with a very creative background with experience in stage acting and performance. I love this combination because it means he understands both the numbers and the human side. He knows what it feels like to be in the middle of the chaos of building, and he knows how much storytelling and communication and presence mean when you're leading a company. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me here on the ViaSkill Founders series.
Thank you. Gosh, I feel like it's a mic drop getting that introduction. I should just quit while I'm ahead.
Well, I'm glad. Well, don't do that yet. We're not quite through yet. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to getting to know a little bit more about your journey and what you've learned across the businesses that you've started. Let's start with a little bit of your backstory. Tell me a little bit about you, what got you started, things that you do now.
Yeah, so I guess to take it from the beginning, I've been a serial entrepreneur and for lack of a better term, a startup bro. Since I came out of college, I've always gravitated towards the ability to, impact the direction of a company, even as an entry level employee early in my career, and just be close to the action. Those are the times when I leaned in most. And so,
Nice.
it's my first startup that I was in was in the automotive industry. And at the time, the company had developed a software that took the entire car buying experience from 6 hours down to 90 minutes, allowing people
Wow.
to walk on and off the dealership. They were actually way ahead of their time, and it turned out the amazing epiphany that came from that software, which ended up failing, by the way, was that there's sort of like a built-in value for keeping people at a dealership for 6 hours, and auto dealers weren't ready to give that up. They still aren't. If you still go and try and buy a car, you're going to be there for minimum 4 hours because they want to wear you down mentally. They want you to
Interesting.
either feel really comfortable in your purchase, feel comfortable in your sales representative, and that doesn't happen in 90 minutes. So there's unfortunately, next time you go buy a car, you can expect to be there for the long haul, regardless of what it sounds like, on the phone. Anyways, I started there, and
Absolutely.
it's been kind of a crazy journey since. I was in a marketing agency that grew to be through acquisition, one of the largest privately owned marketing agencies in the country. Managed and co-founded a auto parts shop here in San Diego,
Hmm.
and started my own sales automation company in 2019. Quickly grew it to 100 clients through COVID, which
Wow.
ended up being like kind of an embarrassment of riches. I had a lot of friends and founder friends that were struggling through COVID business wise and cashing in on those PPP loans, which were juicy. And that
Oh,
wasn't the case for me. I was kind of in the right
wow.
place where, overnight companies were struggling to find something to replace in-person meetings and seminars and workshops and conferences. and I happened to be
Wow.
right there. And so business sort of fell in my lap, and my timing was just really good. Grew that company up
Wow.
pretty fast, and then had a team of 5. Ran into some hot water with an investor towards the end of 22 and into 2023, and had to roll the company up. That story's for another day. Um, but yeah, I've exited a few things. I was one of the first. This is going to sound kind of crazy, but one of the first people to sell ugly sweaters on the web. I had
No way.
uglysweaters.com was
That
my
was you
domain.
then.
Yeah, that was me. I helped kind of push that fad into existence. I was selling sweaters to like Oprah and Comedy Central, and I was on
Wow.
entrepreneur.com for that one. Was kind of a
No kidding.
crazy ride. So yeah, and I was able to exit that one thankfully at the right time, not too late in the game
Right.
when Walmart started carrying ugly sweaters, but just before that. And yeah, now I
Wow.
get the rare opportunity to take everything that I know and have learned, and I'm still learning, and
Hmm.
get to help people not screw it up themselves and avoid some critical pitfalls and keep the growth wheels on
Wow.
the bus.
That's really awesome. That's a great story, especially coming from a background. Have you always been the entrepreneurial spirit? Like, what was it that started you from being an employee, if you ever was one, into something where you're a person that actually build companies?
I think back to one of my first jobs out of college, and I was a marketing coordinator for a company called Fiserv, which is a publicly traded company, big company
Mm-hmm.
in financial services. And my primary role when I started there was to streamline the RFP process in that company. And at the time, it took the company about 3 months to reply to an RFP. And these things were like hundreds of pages long, these RFPs. And they were doing it mostly manually, going question by question to answer each RFP. And they would only get 5 or 6 of them a year that they would respond to, win a couple of deals. And they were such big dollar amounts that's essentially that was their business in the segment that I was working in. And it was like an ATM software kind of thing. So anyways, I started, and I didn't do anything magically, to be honest, but I did like create a database of all their questions, backlogged all their questions, and I took the RFP time from 3 months down to 5 days to respond to an RFP. So
Amazing.
I'm getting to the point of this. I know it's a long buildup, but the
It's all good.
reason why I'm telling you that is because that was 80% of my entire role was these RFPs. And so once
Wow.
once I reduced the time from 3 months to 5 days, Grace, there was literally nothing for me to do in between RFPs. We'd get one in, 5 days to answer, and then I'd ask my direct report, what do I do now? My like key thing is like done. And there was no answer, so I would sleep at my desk. I had a really nice like live journal going at the time where I was just like
Wow.
writing, whatever came to mind. Uh, I would I would curl up like with a blanket underneath my desk, and nobody cared. I was just like a number in this massive company. And
Oh my
there
gosh.
came a point where I was
Crazy.
like thinking about it, like, you know what? I could be here doing this thing for the next 40 years in this company, probably retire with a nice 401k, you know, um, make my, money, save my little bit of money, and this could be a pretty like fair life, or career.
Yeah.
And I had those thoughts, and then I just kind of did some self-discovery and found
Wow.
how incredibly bored I was on a daily basis, how like unchallenged I was, and
Mm-hmm.
it flipped a switch in me. It really did. I kind of revolted the idea of doing that same non-challenging sleepy time work, you know, for
Mm-hmm.
40 years. It scared me. It actually scared me. So I think it was that moment where I was like, that path is just not for me. It's not.
Right.
I'm not cut to be able to sit there in that chair sleeping most days for 40 years. I can't. I just can't do it.
Wow.
You know, boredom is my
Yeah.
kryptonite. So so that,
That's good to know.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's almost like a person. It feels like a personality trait for me to
Right.
to gravitate towards startup environment and
Mm-hmm.
the kind of risk reward feast famine life of a startup, never knowing what the next day is going to be like. I live in those situations a lot better.
That's nice. I mean, it does take a personality to actually have like get started in the founder's journey and getting started in your own businesses. It's stressful. You never know what's going to happen next, and so I think that's part of the excitement of starting, the journey into having your own business. But then the rewards, when you get to the other side of all that struggle, it's definitely worthwhile. At least that's how I feel as well. And it's amazing that you were able to determine that at such a young age, because not everybody does that. Some people, it takes years before they even make that kind of commitment to change. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Curious, yeah, that's really awesome. So I'm kind of curious for your stage acting and performance side of your life of that story. How did that at all help you in what you do today, and what makes you show up while you're building your companies?
It's changed everything for me. So I'll tell you this. I've been just throwing some long stories at you, Grace. You're hitting the right buttons that are pushing the long story button. So when I was growing up, I was a my, my parents were like the sports parents, right? Like, Dan, you're gonna play sports. Find the one, find the one sport. For me, it was soccer, and you're going to play that every day as you're growing up, all the way as long as you take it and as long as you care to do. That's going to be your path. And that's what they knew, and
Mhm.
that's where they were able to guide me. And I loved it. I had a great experience in youth sports, and I met all of my best friends and had made a ton of memories and all that stuff. But secretly in here, I was a theater kid. I really was. I was a theater kid that didn't know what that meant, and my
Mhm.
parents wouldn't have known to foster those skills and talents. And so it,
Right.
it it just stayed inside me bubbling for a really long time until I was 32 years old, and I just felt like something was missing, like something in my life wasn't complete. There was a hole that needed to be filled, an empty bucket,
Mhm.
and it was at that time like I kind of reached like a tipping point at midnight. Under the covers, I had my mobile phone and my credit card, and I booked my first improv class. And
Wow.
I
That's great.
I went and I absolutely sucked when I did it, as everyone does. Like
Well,
I was
yeah.
horrible, but I felt like embraced, like there was my people there.
Uh-huh.
Like I felt like there were people there that thought a little bit more like me. And
Mm-hmm.
I I I just took one thing after another and committed myself to the craft of studying improv, which, gosh, has so many like business skills inherently cooked into it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I grew up in the system of the theater that I went through, and I've now been there for 13 years and have been
Wow.
a main stage performer for the last like 3.5 years. And from that, I've
Amazing.
I've been able to experience so many new, interesting and provoking opportunities. I've formed companies and groups of people within like those circles, and it's given me like the ambition, the drive, the confidence to continue to push myself into unknown and
Oh.
um, you know be more authentic when
Yeah,
I show up to things and do
for
things in the way
sure.
that feel
I
more
see
comfortable
that.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen that as we were when you were hosting. an event. You definitely have that charisma and that
Thank you.
motivation to get people to listen. So it's really awesome.
But what I'll
And I
say
know
is,
you
Grace, that stuff is
huh?
not, it's not necessarily a natural talent. I think it's important for people to know that
Mm,
it takes skill and repetition and
right.
practice and studying and commitment to those type of things. Everything, everything from like a personality and a presentation standpoint can be learned skills. And I didn't actually realize that until I
Really.
became ingrained in it.
That's actually a really good point. I think that's something that people just generally have struggles with, where they wonder how, just in generally, just not even acting, but just going into like a meeting or presenting themselves or their business. It's a learned thing. You don't necessarily go in there and all of a sudden magically you can actually pitch your own business, or pitch yourself as
Yeah.
a person that knows what they're talking about. It takes time.
Yeah.
So just go in there and just fall on your face a couple times, and then you'll be better.
Yeah. That's it. That's it.
That's awesome. So I know that you'd mentioned that you had a few businesses. You started, you're growing, you exited your businesses. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Now that we kind of segued into, because you've had a lot of really successes even in your acting. So you said that you started some companies. What was something in your early ventures compared to your later ones? What's changed in the way that you actually did something in the old way, or the new, it's changed in how you manage it now, or like something that stands out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's certainly been an evolution. I would say that I struggled early on in identifying opportunities and threats and being able to leverage both in different ways. I didn't really grasp how to do that. I also got increasingly better at business development the longer I spent in founder life, where early on I didn't really understand, how to measure my own metrics and,
Right.
what kind of force and momentum I needed to create to make my ventures viable. And that didn't come until later on in my career. Also,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think a lot needs to be said about harvesting the right mindset when you're a founder. And I needed
Right.
to fail a couple times and feel the hurt of that, and have some dissatisfaction in my own performance, and have
Right.
things not go the way that I expected, for me to later on um, revolt at the idea of you know things ending in the way that
Right.
they did in previous ventures. And that
Yeah,
only comes with
absolutely.
experience, right? You can't cut to the
Right.
finish line on that. Maybe some people can, but I wasn't able to. you know
I can totally understand that. For us, or for me anyway, when I started with ViaSkill, I don't know how many times I've had to pivot, but it was a lot. Finding things, okay, that didn't work. Let's go ahead and move on. And I'm sure that you kind of experience the same thing, where you're like, oh well, okay, let's just pivot on. And I think that's probably something that early founders don't realize. They're kind of stuck with going one direction and not pivoting quickly enough, or they pivot, but they pivot like the wrong way, or there isn't really a wrong way, to be honest. So in terms of like the way that and I know you've exited a few, what do you wish that more founders understood about that exit, or about some pivoting, that maybe early on you could help other people say, okay, well, let's do it. You shouldn't do it this way, do it this way instead. Or is there an answer?
Yeah. Gosh, there's a lot to unpack there with that, because I would say specifically in the times that I exited, um, you can't. In the first one I exited, I think I was waiting. I did a lot of like waiting for the timing to be right, to exit, and expecting things would kind of fall in my lap, onto my plate, since I had such like an exposed brand at the time. And it didn't really work like that. I just didn't have the know-how to plant my own trees from an exit standpoint, and how to maintain investor relationships, and how to really find a deal when the timing was right. And I knew when it was right. I knew when the height of my sort of, fad had reached like its peak, and that would have been the right time. I did wait, much too long, and had to take the deal that was there instead of, the right one at the right time. And so, that there was a lot to learn there. But I could have played my
Right.
hand a lot heavier. I could have been a lot more strategic in the way that I approached my exit, for sure.
Mm.
In the second one that I exited, I I think that I'm making both of these things sound like they were really negative experiences for me, but just for learning's sake.
Right.
I in the second one I exited, I did not um, listen to my gut when I felt some red flags go up in a deal,
Hmm.
and the investor that I was sucked in with definitely led me astray in some instances. Fed me some things that I ate up and didn't question, and it caused us some problems later on that ended up to the company itself rolling up. And I didn't do a well enough job in both the due diligence and also listening to my instincts and my intuition. I really didn't.
Right.
And so I think, and that was just 4 years ago, right? So
Right.
that you know that that definitely it was a major learning experience, right? Didn't get what I wanted out of that exit, and it it's something I'll think about, right? It's something that I'm
Right.
certainly going to pass on, as much knowledge as I can about that.
Right.
And you have to
Yeah,
imagine that, like,
absolutely.
for early startups, I was, I had done a couple million in revenue, and I had a team of five. I wasn't big. I was still early, right? Like, you'd still consider that kind of early. And
Hmm.
when someone came along that was waving a pretty big number at me, it was exciting. It was exciting. I started the gears started turning. I started to dream. I started to think about my logo on the side of a building, and it was really pulling the wool over my eyes, and kind of forced me to take my eye off the real goal, and some of those red flags that I told you were there, but I just was looking the other way because I was just
Right.
mystified.
That is a really common thing, I think, and especially in early founders. In my own experience is, trying to take on not necessarily an investor, but a co-founder.
Hmm.
And in my experience, I'm like, okay, I have this person that I really want to bring on, and it just turned out it just didn't work out, and I ultimately, for me, I didn't bring them on as a co-founder, but it could have been a bad choice in a lot of ways. So going back now in your experience and starting these founders starting businesses as an early founder, what advice would you do differently or start growing as a company? What piece of advice you can give to somebody right now if they start a company today?
Yeah, I would say there's a number of things there. Um, I would say that you need a really good inner advisory circle, whether it be mentors, friends, family that are experienced, even like groups of people. You have to have sounding boards, and you have to feel comfortable um, sharing sharing what it is that you're experiencing, what you're going through, and I think that's an understated um,
Right.
issue that founders face is isolation and even loneliness,
Right.
and having to make decisions on a daily basis that impact people, and kind of scratching your head at the end of the day. Were these right? And just putting a lot on your own
Right.
shoulders. Where I think that
Yeah.
had I had, I really like what I've seen from some early founders that are creating advisory boards for their company, even early on. People that they
Mm-hmm.
respect and admire and feel like they get a lot of sound advice from. Form a board. You know,
Oh, that's awesome.
I
Good
think it's
advice.
something that um, people shy away from because maybe they think, well, I can't really offer them anything. Maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
equity down the road. I can't pay anybody. Why would they pay attention to me? But I think people do and will, if they're the right fit.
Right.
If they really care about what you're doing, if they care about your mission or your solution, they're going to show up for you. And so
Yeah.
that's certainly that one thing I think could have saved me a lot of headache in many instances that I've founded companies.
Awesome. That's great. That's a great piece of advice, and I totally understand that because I've had experiences. I've been fortunate that I have been able to bring on a few people that share the same vision, but it took a little while to get here
Yeah.
for me. So I feel you on that one. So you work a lot with small, mid-sized businesses. When you look at ones that make it versus ones that do not, what patterns do you see?
Yeah. Um, a couple things that I think are consistent for companies would be um, companies that are successful in biz dev. Certainly like I work with a lot of companies that are trying to figure that piece out still. And either they have to hire people and maybe even overhire in their instance to try and move forward, and it just sets them back down the road. But really not having your ducks in a row if you're at market or you're going to market is a tough one. And these days, like that it's so few and far between that you're able to find significant round raises that are gonna get you to market. I know a lot of people are going bigger friends and family rounds, which I think is cool and beneficial. But there's the goalposts keep moving when it comes to like VC money, angel money. Now I'm hearing like 2 million AR, in order to go in and get a significant round. And the money's not there for the early founders anymore. The companies that are between ideation and go to market, or the ones that are just kind of tickling the edges of market. So find a way to become your lead salesperson. Whether you're a technical
Right.
founder, a product focused founder, or you are like a marketing person, like solve sales first, so that you can just feed the company regardless of what happens down the road with fundraising.
Wow, that's a really great piece of advice, actually. It's really, and something that I've heard over and over again, especially now. It's like, oh, it used to be so much easier. And now it's like, well, you got to be your own thing. You got to be your own salesperson. So that's really awesome. We hear a lot of common stats about how many small businesses fail. Now, that's like a constant thing that we are hearing as founders.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so, you have a likelihood of failing than you are of success, is what I hear. So, from your experience, what are the real reasons behind those failures that you think?
Statistically, they say that money is behind the majority of them. I
Hmm.
think that the underlying factor is also an inability to push through setbacks. So there's some like mental health well-being, and also just frankly mental fortitude in order to continue to push through.
Hmm.
I think so many people
Right.
face challenges in their business and they go, "That's it. You know what? I'm an employee. That's it. I'm gonna go back
Yeah.
to it. you know, back
Be
to the
done.
grind." And I think that unwinds more businesses than are statistically tracked. The data that will
Hmm.
shows up is money, a shortage of money.
Right.
But every
Yeah.
startup has a shortage of money. Just about, right?
That's
Like,
true.
I'm seeing more companies that are going to like the single the single founder, completely AI built company
Oh.
route. And
Mm-hmm.
in that instance, of course, like your bottom line is pretty low, and maybe you're
Right.
selling a pretty easy to deliver widget, and you just have massive profit margins and your EBIT is out of control. But for like the rest of the companies out there, um, you know, it's not the case. You've got to find a
Yeah.
way through. You got to find a way, to break out of um, a rut if it occurs. How are you going to get across a chasm that would get you to the next tier, the next rung up on the ladder, and not completely fall off? Survival is as much about the founder's ability to keep pushing than anything else.
Absolutely. That's great. Great advice. Especially, I've been there too, being on shaky ground, trying to wonder whether or not this is all worth it.
Yeah.
But,
You're not
you just
alone,
keep
Grace.
pushing.
You're not alone.
I'm glad- Not alone, I
No.
know. And with AI, you mentioned people doing like what they call it vibe coding now, where a solo founder will just make something, and as it's turned out, it's very cool until you have to implement it, and then it becomes okay. Where do I do, and how do I begin? So, in the with this landscape having to change with AI now over the last couple of years now, especially with AI, are you seeing like a shift in how people do their business or even start their business versus how it was, when you first started?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the best indicator is, or one strong indicator is to see what the enterprise companies are doing, right? Like they're going to be first in
Mm,
a lot of things.
right.
Last year, Salesforce laid off like 1,000 people in lieu of automating tasks, but then they hired back like 800 people. And you look at something like that and you go, okay, maybe it was a little premature that they let all those people go. They were trying it, they shot their shot as it were. But things are moving quickly. Things are moving so
Yeah.
fast. Even some platforms, and platforms that we all use. If you were to look at this exact same platforms a year ago, even like image generation, it's
Hmm.
not even the same tool that it was. The quality of
No.
work that's being produced is just it's just moving so fast. And so I think that certainly like the people that are early and often and taking advantage of AI tools are able to move faster in some instances, but um, it's certainly not everything. I think
Right.
we're getting to a stage where people are calling bullshit on some AI backed programming and
Right.
solutions that just aren't scalable, or they don't have enough soul in them.
Right.
I think we're starting to get better at sniffing that stuff out. I think the
Right.
pendulum could swing back a little bit, where we go, no, 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 no. There are certain things that we absolutely need a person in that seat, and it's
Right.
unavoidable. So I do like the idea of a single founder being able to carry a pretty sizable load if you leverage AI properly. But you do get to a point, I
Hmm.
think, where people still need it to be a factor. People still need oversight and impact
Absolutely.
on a product or a solution, and there's just no way around that yet.
Right, right, totally. It's totally true. I think there's a lot of things that you can do and you can build things very quickly, but then the execution of that's very challenging. So as we wrap up here, I want to make sure there's enough time here for you to kind of give a little background about your business, what you do, and what you can bring to people starting in their business or however way. It's
Yeah.
your stage. Tell us
Yeah, no,
about
I appreciate
what you
that.
do.
So I'm a business advisor with Insperity, and what I essentially do is help founders that are crafting their early team, putting those first hires on the books, help them do it right from the start, so that that doesn't become a blemish as you get deeper into the company. Maybe you're just going into a round raise, or you're coming out of one, and you want to start staffing up. You want to bring the right talent in place, and you want to keep them there. I would be your person for that. I help advise on essentially anything that a person within a company, an employee, would touch, from the time that they're recruited and hired to the time when they're either termed or they retire. I really can impact in a lot of ways, whether it be, helping create team culture and, you know, uh, a benefit stack that supports people's mental health and well-being, or their livelihood and their family's livelihood from a financial standpoint. All those things are under my advisory umbrella. And so work with a lot of local San Diego companies. Certainly see a lot of like tech and bio, pharma, med companies that I work with. And the tried and true SaaS companies that shot out like a rocket and are ready for the next thing. I'm definitely active in those communities and eager to help folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. In a way that how can people actually contact you? What would be the best way?
Best way is to find me on LinkedIn, and then I've got a newsletter sign up, and you can subscribe to my newsletter, which has everything. You've gotten kind of the ball of wax already from hearing from me, but it's principles, policy, people, and punchlines are the main things that you would get from my newsletter. And so,
Love that.
yeah. And then, as always, if there's a need, or you just want to have a nice little engaging chat, you can find my booking link through the newsletter sign up.
Awesome. Thanks again for that. And for everyone listening, if this conversation is helpful, share it with another founder who might need this help. And let's just be one big community of founders. Thanks again.
Thanks,
I'm Grace
Grace.
Coupette, and this is another episode of ViaSkill Founder Series. Thanks so much, Daniel.